So, OpenAI just dropped GPT-5, and you've probably heard them call it a PhD-level expert. But, behind all that hype and what was a pretty messy launch event, what's the actual story here? Let's get into it. Yeah, so OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, he set the bar really high. I mean, comparing the new model to a PhD-level expert, that's a massive claim. The big question is, does the reality even come close to matching that hype? All right, let's really dig in. Okay, so the official launch livestream, frankly, it was kind of a mess. They showed this bar chart that was just bizarrely wrong. I mean, you can see it right here. The bar for 52% is somehow taller than the one for 69%. Little things like that immediately made people think, wait a minute, and it really suggested the whole thing might have been super rushed. And that really brings us to a super important point that our expert source made. Look, GPT-5 is incredibly smart on paper. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't automatically make it more useful for the things you and I do every day. It's kind of like having a PhD doesn't make you any better at doing the dishes, right? So let's push past the hype for a second and really zero in on the one area where this new intelligence makes a huge difference, and that's reliability. All right, so maybe the biggest upgrade in GPT-5 isn't the flashiest one, but it is huge. We're talking about a massive reduction in what they call hallucinations. You know what I mean? When the AI gives you an answer that's super confident, but just completely wrong. They're famous for it. And look, the scale of this improvement, it's just staggering. When you're talking about long-form factual stuff, GPT-5's error rate drops to just 0.7%. To put that in perspective, that is 7 times more accurate than GPT-4. That's not just a small step, that is a massive leap forward in how much we can actually trust these things. So how did they pull this off? Well, this incredible jump in reliability seems to be coming from a totally new way of training it. It's a technique that lets the AI learn from goals that are more, well, subjective. Think about trying to teach it to write a beautiful poem. There's no single right answer there, right? It's not like a math problem. It's actually learning nuance, which is a huge deal. And here's the kicker. This way, more reliable, way more trustworthy model, they're rolling it out to everyone for free. How is that even possible? Well, it's because of a new, super efficient architecture behind the scenes. It's smart enough to figure out exactly how much computer power each question needs, which makes the whole thing a lot cheaper for OpenAI to run. Okay, so you've got all this new power, this new reliability. Where does it make the biggest impact? The answer is simple: coding. So our expert decided to put this to the test. They gave GPT-5 a really simple 2-line prompt. Just, hey, build me a website comparing GPT-5 to its competitor, Claude. And get this, it did it in under 3 minutes. But the crazy part, unlike the older models, the code it spit out worked perfectly. On the very first try, no errors, no having to go in and debug anything. That's a game changer. And that right there, that ability to create working, error-free apps from just a simple sentence, that's exactly what OpenAI is talking about when they say we're entering the era of software on demand. It means if you need a tool, you just ask for it. The AI builds it for you right then and there. But here's where the story takes a turn. There's a twist. Because for the first time in what feels like forever, a big new release from OpenAI doesn't feel like some alien technology from the future. The competition? Well, they're catching up. And they're catching up fast. If you look at some of the key benchmarks, you can see the gap is just closing. On this really tough software engineering test called SWE Bench, Anthropic's model Claude 4.1 is pretty much neck and neck with them. And then there's this insanely difficult reasoning test. They call it Humanity's Last Exam, and on that one, xAI's Grok 4 actually looks like it's ahead. The takeaway is huge. OpenAI isn't alone at the top of the mountain anymore. And all of this, it brings us to what might just be the real game changer from OpenAI's big announcement week. And surprise, it wasn't GPT-5. It was a completely different model. Let me introduce you to GPT-OS. Now, this is what's called an open model, and our expert told us it created way more excitement, way more surprise in the research community than GPT-5 did. See, unlike ChatGPT, this isn't just a website you talk to. It's the actual model that you can download and build your own stuff on top of. And the strategic play here, it is huge. I mean, GPT-OS lets businesses build their own custom AIs trained on their own private data and keep it all secure on their own systems. Plus, it provides a really powerful open model that wasn't developed in China, which is a massive deal for any company navigating today's global tech scene.
So, when you put it all together, what's the big takeaway? Look, GPT-5 is fantastic. It's a really reliable, polished refinement. But it feels like the industry's obsession with just making language models bigger and better at, well, language, might be hitting a wall, a point of diminishing returns. You can see the gap is closing. The whole race is starting to shift.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. What if the next great frontier isn't about building a better chatbot at all? What if instead the real race is to build a physical AI? An AI for robotics, for autonomous research, an AI that can actually see and move and think in the physical world. And you have to imagine that race is going to need a whole different level of data and a completely different scale of power.